Oh, he's out today with back spasms. And I'm sitting here like, are you kidding me? Like, I can't even drive my car. My ribs are broken. I can't turn left, but I'm going to play in this week's game because I'm going to let you inject me with basically Novocaine so I can play in the game.
All right, welcome back inside the EQC studios. I've got a special guest and someone I haven't spoke to in forever. We were kind of friends back in the day. I'm going to get into that story, but first of all, I want to welcome Seahawks quarterback Matt Hasselbeck. Matt, how you doing?
What's up, Ryan? What's up, man?
Oh, not much.
Or should I say, good day, mate?
Dude, look at you. Nailed it. I love it. Nailed it.
Did I, or am I just feeding into every stereotype that you get?
No, like, dude, it sounded legit. Now, I've heard plenty of attempts of that, and now I'm telling you, that's up there. It's pretty good. There's some bad ones. I'm not going to lie. There's some bad ones. Now, so many people have, because last couple of days I said, hey, I'm going to have Matt on the show, and I've brought your name up throughout the years, and people are like, how do you two know each other? It's kind of weird, and it's not like we spent all this time hanging out as buddies, but I did get some good moments with you. But I want to clear this up. The way we met was through a mutual friend, Stacy Pressman. Shout out to Stacy. And she was coming up to Seattle, and she had mentioned, she's like, yeah, I know Matt, I know Sarah really well, this and that. I'm like, oh, cool. She works at ESPN. I'm like, at what extent? She's like, hey, let's go to a Seahawks game. I'm like, for sure. I'd never been to a game, by the way. Never been to a game. And sure enough, after the end, she goes, hey, I said, where are we sitting? And she's like, I always sit with Matt's family. I'm like, excuse me? I was legit. I was like, are you kidding? So I had the best time. And then afterwards, we hung out. Dude, I went to your house, had a barbecue after the game. It was great.
Yeah, listen, you're dead on with that. Stacy Pressman went to high school with my wife. She was, I think, a freelance writer for ESPN, the magazine at the time. And she'd come to Seattle and do features on all these different people. I remember she did a thing on you and your story coming from where, Australia and all that stuff. I remember there was a skateboarder one time named Little Tricky. I think it was his nickname. Mitchy Brusco, I think is his name, and he would come over. It was cool. It was like a cool little connection. But I think playing in Seattle when I started there, it was one of my favorite things, and it didn't happen a lot, just kind of like you said. But one of my favorite things was getting to know the other athletes in the city. Whether it was guys on the Mariners like Raul Ibanez or Jamie Moyer or John Olerud or there were some great baseball players that came through, but even the Sonics, the Supersonics were in town. I sort of joke, there wasn't room in Seattle for me and KD at the same time is what I would say to my teammates. They're like, what are you even talking about? KD's it's just sort of funny, but it was fun at the time. I remember my teammates playing pickup hoops with those guys. I remember even even in the Seattle Storm days, when those early days, going and supporting them, the Sounders, when Freddie Lumberg came to town, it was a lot of fun. And I think you pick up little nuggets from people in different sports. What are some things that they hang their hat on, and I think that was kind of the common bond that we had initially too. Yeah,
for sure. And it's funny too, man, because coming from Australia and playing baseball, I can mention some baseball names, and you mentioned Ken Griffey Jr. The dude was on The Simpsons, right? But beyond that, there wasn't a whole lot of name dropping going on. It's like, oh, hey, I pitched against Vladimir Guerrero, right? And everyone's like, I don't even know who that is. But when I drop a Matt Hasselbeck, when I drop a, hey, I'm going hanging out at his house and having a barbecue, dude, I had some serious credibility even back in Australia.
It's just different circles. I just like it's music. When I left the Seahawks, I went to the Tennessee Titans, and Tennessee is just such a Nashville is just such a music city. It's crazy. It was after the NFL lockout, and it was I had 24 hours to find a house, find a school for my kids, and start training camp. And we rented a house from Tim McGraw and Faith Hill, and it just was such a different, just the different circles, And so I don't know, a month before you're hanging out with Ichiro, and it was no big deal to somebody. Then all of a sudden you're with a country music star, and it's people are freaking out. Your story about your first Seahawks game. I think that was the first concert that I ever went to when I got to Nashville. Got there, we had 2 or 3 days of practice, and then we got the night off, and my teammates took me to a Keith Urban concert. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, where are we sitting? And they're like, oh, we're in the suite with his family. I was like, oh, like.
So you're saying, so all your teammates, when you got there, were you a country music fan before that?
I said I was. Like, I told everybody I was, but then I got there and I was like, Nashville, oh, man. I don't know it like you guys know it, you know? And they were like, who's you guys? You mean y'all? I was like, yeah, I mean y'all. My bad.
I'm telling you, I've been in Nashville a couple times. I was there in late last December, but like, it's one of those ones. I'll be honest with you. Country music, when I first got to the States, I was just like, how is this mainstream? Because it wasn't mainstream in Australia whatsoever. But then I do enjoy it now. But when you go to Nashville, it's kind of like that. It's like you have to get beyond the popular stuff. Otherwise, it's like, bro, like, you don't know what the hell you're talking about, basically. So when you went to Tennessee, the football players had that obviously that strong tie where you had like some connections there with some of all the country music, big time names and everything else.
Yeah, it was just like it's a big city, but it's a small city. It's kind of like Seattle. It's an international city, but it's a pretty small community. Like, I would just even say, like, equating it to like Seahawks and Mariners, we didn't hang out a lot together, but we all had the exact same friends. Like, we had mutual friends, and we would do the same charity events together, whether it was Children's Hospital or Special Olympics or medical teams type things. Like, it was you were acquaintances, and I think there was just a mutual respect. And then the awards dinners and those types of things. I think like the Seattle Post-Intelligencer had like their awards dinner every year, or you'd see people at like different things, and you never knew what people were like. Like you kind of saw them from a distance, and then you get to see them sort of like when the cameras aren't around and that kind of stuff. And it was like, oh, wow, I didn't think that guy was like that. And that's what he's really like. Or, man, that guy's a loose cannon. Or that, it was fun to see what people were really like, behind the scenes.
Oh, for sure. And, it's funny too. Speaking of that, like now I believe that was 2009, maybe when I first met you, and that was at a time where I didn't know my football history, right? And I remember your wife Sarah talking about the days when you first came to Seattle, and I never forget. I remember this vividly, where she was talking about it was at the Husky Stadium, right? There wasn't Lumen Field at that point. And she was just like, in those days, I'm sitting there going, hold on a minute. Like, I'm looking at Matt Hasselbeck here as being the dude. And she was talking about back in 2000, 2001, getting there and playing at Husky Stadium, didn't even have your own place. And she said she was like yelling at people in the stands because people were so angry at like the Seahawks for so many different reasons.
She was probably yelling at me from the stands. Like, throw the ball, throw it away. What are you doing? No, it was, listen, 2001 was my first year in Seattle, and it was a great year for Seattle sports, but it wasn't a great year for Seahawks sports. Like, we were a team trying to rebuild a little bit. We were figuring out our stadium situation. We were figuring out our quarterback situation. And the Mariners were amazing. Like, they were amazing that year. They won 100-something games that year. And I could even remember playing in games. Like, we'd be on offense. And, like, I'd be in my cadence, like, green 21, green 21. And all of a sudden, the fans would cheer wildly. And like someone would jump off sides, and it was like, what on earth? What just happened? And it'd be like, Brett Boone hits a double or something like that at the same time, So I don't know. It was cool. Like I can't say that it wasn't cool. It just felt like for me personally, we weren't holding up our end of the bargain in terms of like Seattle sports and what we wanted to be, what we knew we could be, and what I felt like I could be. So yeah, the early years were not easy, and we figured it out eventually and got into our own stadium and then created a home field advantage that was so legit that it makes it feel better now.
Yeah, like I said, man, it's just sometimes when I'll talk to kids and I had a chance to play Major League Baseball and do all this other stuff, but it's like, hey, hold on a second, like I need to tell you more about what this kind of year was or that kind of year was, because there's always that pathway, and it's funny too, and like I said, all I knew was Lumen Field. I can't remember what it was called.
Well, first it was Seahawks Stadium, okay, because it was Quest Field, and I think they wanted stadium to be different than field, because like I don't know, they were right next to each other, and I think it was Seahawks Stadium, and then it turned into Quest Field. or I think it was Quest. I would just say Quest.
I think it was Quest.
And then it was something else, and then But truly and honestly, like for us, like the name, it almost doesn't matter. Like what matters is the intimidation factor that we have there now. Just like other teams, other quarterbacks, other offensive line coaches, like they literally go into games in Seattle with a couple of like rules, like, hey, we're not going to do the same audible system that we normally do on short yardage, goal line, third down. If we're backed up, we got to do this. If we're in the red zone, we got to do that. It's a pretty cool thing because we didn't always have it. They had it back in the day with the early teams and like with the Kingdome days, and then we lost it for a little bit, and then we got it back. So whatever the name is, I know it's loud there.
Yeah. So it really is different to other places around the US in regards to the noise and that kind of factor. You're talking about offensive coordinators walking in, having to change because of that.
Yeah. So like, some teams don't respect it until they play there. Like I remember the New York Giants came, I think it was 2005. They came and they jumped off sides 11 times in one game. 11 times. It's like crazy. And I think they went in there just saying, hey, we're just, block out the noise. Like, all right, it's great to talk that way, but like, no, this is a real thing. And so, so like we would even do it when we'd go play in dome stadiums. Like we would go into like certain game plans and we would just say, all right, we have a check with me audible system. So let's just say we call a play. We call 93 blast alert, say 93 blast alert, 98 handoff solid, kill 200 jet dragon. So there's like 3 different plays in one. If it's the first play, we're going to say, hey, let it roll. If it's the second play, we're going to say alert, alert. The third play, we're going to say kill, kill. Or like some version of that. We get on the road in certain situations. You just like, you know what? The heck with it, man. We're going to just call a play that we think is good versus most things, and we're just going to run it. Even if it's a bad play, we'll take that over jumping off sides or, 8 guys heard the play and not everyone heard the play. And then we basically just say, hey, running back, you got to make somebody miss if we have a bad play. Hey, quarterback, you got to make something out of nothing if it's a bad play. So, the crowd noise is a real thing. I mean, it's not like other sports where it's just like, oh, it's loud and you can't concentrate. Yeah. It's legitimately like people don't know what play we're running on offense if that crowd noise is loud at the right time.
Yeah, it's funny, man. Baseball now, I don't know if you paid attention, but like they're not putting signs down. The catcher's not putting signs down. They're using the little headpiece up here, earpiece, whatever you want to call it. And I've talked to a bunch of guys that are like, hey, man, it's we don't talk about it, but it is an issue, especially once you get late in the season, that playoff push, because guys are trying to focus on hearing the pitch exactly with some of that crowd noise. But
well, you also like a huddle, you get guys with different accents. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts. My left tackle's from Alabama. If I say 29 techs instead of 29 tacks, it's a totally different play. Right. And it is kind of, I don't know. It just takes one time. That one person hears the wrong thing, and the play has no chance to be successful.
Yeah. Hey, well, you can program, by the way, with these earpieces, you can program different voices. You can ask like a celebrity to give you the pitches too, like fastball outside. Apparently, I don't want to talk too much about that because I'm not supposed to. But speaking of the Seahawks history, recently Mike McDonald comes in as a new head coach, and there was a big thing a couple of weeks ago, and I've been asked about it, but who better to ask about it? What are your thoughts if they had the mural? Some of the Seahawks history. I don't know how far back the history went. I was trying to look at the.
I do. I do. Don't worry.
Okay. Well, what are your thoughts on the fact they just put a giant white paintbrush straight to it?
Well, I don't know what the reaction was from the players of the Pete Carroll era. I'm not sure what their reaction was. Like, I'm sure everyone had a different opinion. But I'll just take you back to my first day as Pete Carroll as head coach. We had accomplished, I think, a lot of good stuff in Seattle under Mike Holmgren. And, we were really proud of it. In the first day, like literally the first day, Pete Carroll comes in, has this awesome team meeting, and he shows this highlight reel of all the good stuff that, like, the Seahawks had done, like, throughout the years and throughout, like, a lot of my time there. And he was like,
this is day one of him coming in, introduce himself.
Day one, Pete Carroll and all the guys from USC, they come up and they show this great highlight reel, like Seahawks, you know, is awesome. Like it was super great stuff. And he was like, all right, enjoy it. Like we honor it, we celebrate it, but that's over. New regime, new era.
Wow.
We're making new memories here. And we're going to do it a different way. Here's how we're going to do it. And like, I remember as a player feeling like I was super proud and like, it was super like, I don't know, like it was really cool that he honored it. And we really, you know, we were proud of it. And a lot of those people were gone, but like still it meant something to us. It was foundational to me personally.
Yeah.
And when he wiped it clean, like, was I offended? Like it was something. It was like an emotion I had to deal with. It was kind of like, all right, I can put that on the back burner, but I didn't really appreciate the deleting of it. You know what I'm saying? But
I
he honored it. He did such a good job of honoring what it was that I think I was okay with like sort of putting it in the archives and saying, hey, clean slate, let's move forward. And so he did a good job with that. But if anyone now is sort of crying that the new head coach is doing the exact same thing, then no.
Was it besides you mentioned the video and he was basically saying, look, you know, that's done, everything else. What was a couple things? What was the conversation like with some of your teammates who'd been through some of those years, like that were, you know, been there for a while, that watching themselves in these highlight videos? Did you have conversations with them saying, like trying to gauge their reaction as well?
It's funny. A lot of the guys were gone. Like a lot of the guys were gone already. There was a coach in between Mike Holmgren and Pete Carroll, and that was Jim Mora. And like what we had already known, and there were different general managers along the way, but what we had already known was, and this is not unique to Seattle, this is every team in the NFL. When there's a new head coach or a new general manager or a new owner, there's change. There's just change. Sometimes there's change just to make change. And so like we all felt it. And so some guys were already gone. Some teammates were already gone. And, you know, I think mostly people were like, okay, new coach coming in, Pete Carroll, guy from college. How much is he going to clean house? And he cleaned house pretty much completely on the coaching staff. And the feeling was like, is he going to clean house with players? And really, that's kind of what the norm is. So I think guys are just mostly feeling. Some people are like worried about their own job. Other guys feel like, hey, you not only did you cut my friend, my buddy, my teammate, you're sort of erasing his memory, you know, a little bit. But I don't think it's a bad thing to do, you know. And I do think that this every year, even when we were the same people with the same coaching staff, our coaches would say, hey, listen, last year's team was last year's team. This is a new team. Doesn't matter what you did last year. It matters what we do going forward. Our goal is to go 1-0 every week. Like, how are we going to accomplish that? And even when you go 1-0, it doesn't matter what you did the previous week. You got to move forward to the next week. Yeah. So I think that mindset is a really healthy mindset to take. But I don't know. I think you just got to do it. I don't know. You got to do it gently and kind of like I guess in summary, I appreciated how Pete Carroll sort of honored the past. But he ripped the Band-Aid off. It wasn't there was nothing soft and sweet about it.
With this mural too, and correct me if I'm wrong here, it's more for like obviously media members see it, but it's not like, you know, it's not like it's on the side of Lumen Field where it's just like, hey, get a paintbrush on that thing, get rid of it. For a public eye, essentially, it's more for, and like I said, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not 100% sure. I haven't looked into it far enough. But you basically, it's for the players to walk past who were there in that Pete Carroll era only, right? It doesn't go back to any earlier than that.
I mean, there'll be some things that are so old that it's like it doesn't matter. It's Steve Largent. It's just like, oh, it's Steve Largent. You know, it's like he's like our mascot practically. You know what I mean? It's like put him in the same category as like an always and a forever. But no, I think like even in college, I had 3 different head coaches in college, and every time we'd get a new head coach, it was new paint color in the locker room, new signs in the locker room, different signs in the weight room, different murals. It's just the norm. And so like this one with the Seahawks got so much attention, and probably because people had opinions about it here and there. But I mean, no, some of that stuff you can never take it away. Like when you hoisted Lombardi, you'll never take that away. But on the day-to-day, like on the first floor of a like in Seattle, it's the first floor is where the players are basically, okay? First and second floor. So like that area, it's almost just like you wipe it clean. This is a new year. This is a new regime.
Right.
We're just focused on the future. Someday in the past when you're retired, or someday in the future when you're retired, you get to look back at the past. But right now we're focused on what's ahead of us. And honestly, that's exactly what Pete Carroll did. Exactly.
Yeah. Did you, what was your relationship like in those early stages with Pete Carroll? Like, even just, I would call it, video happens day one, comes in, watch the video. What was it like, those initial, that initial relationship?
Yeah, I was almost 35 years old when he became the head coach, and I was the starting quarterback. And there was a lot of talk, I think, about like, okay, what's this college coach going to be like with this older quarterback? And truly, like, a lot of the stuff I expected not to like a defensive head coach. Like, it's like the list goes on and on. But I loved it. Like, I loved playing for Pete. I thought he was exceptional. I thought he was really great. Yeah. His leadership style was so unique, so different than anything I'd been a part of. And, I just kind of told myself, hey, like, just buy in, just totally buy in as much as you can. And I didn't succeed always. Like, I think I was skeptical a little bit early, but, no, it was good. I mean, like, listen, I'm almost 35. We're doing like bag drills like you do in high school. We're like, tapping the ceiling to prove that we're all in. They put up a sign over the door. It said all in. And if you had to tap the sign, then there's literally like coaches sitting there like, number 8, yep, he tapped all in. Number 11, nope, he didn't tap all in. Number 30, he tapped in, but it wasn't very energetic. This guy tapped in with 2 hands. And it was kind of like, I don't think we all saw the method in the madness at the time.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed it. I think Pete's a great coach. I'm really proud of the year we had that year. We won the division. We had a losing record, won the division. That's the Beastquake season, the Beastquake game against the Saints. I've often told people that's the year I'm probably the most proud of because it was the most difficult year with all the turnover, the change, injuries, all the stuff that went into it. And but I think it was a foundational year for the success that Pete and those guys had later on.
I'm just thinking back, right? Because you got to remember, Pete Carroll comes in. He's a college head coach coming into that situation. You're 35 years old, and I run into this a lot too. I've had, obviously, just like you have, man. Like, from high school, I didn't play college baseball. Minor league baseball, played years and years of it, major league. But I watched, for example, I watched like Hard Knocks, right, on HBO, and you see like the big conference room you guys have and the head coach coming out. Now, again, there's cameras on him, so it might be a little bit different. And I'm sitting there going, okay, are you forcing this message? Like, you're trying to give this big message. And I get, like I said, the cameras on you may be a little bit different. But it's ballsy, man, for a Pete Carroll to just kind of take this more of. You mentioned the fact you were doing stuff that you hadn't done since high school. He's coming from that college background to come into a situation, and as a leadership role, it is so hard to get everyone's attention, to be able to gain the attention, especially from veteran players. But I watched that, especially in the NFL. Baseball's a little bit different. But you got these new managers like Stephen Vogt with the Cleveland Guardians, Joe Espada with the Astros. I listen to the way they talk. They're coming from this situation where they're a bench coach or first time into that. But have you ever had situations where head coach? You've had some good ones, obviously, but ones where you're like, dude, it's just, you don't need to force this. Like, just be genuine. Just speak. Just be real. Be yourself here, because they're trying to push it a little bit too hard.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I even remember when Bob Melvin was the first year head or manager for the Mariners, and he was younger than Jamie Moyer at the time. Like, there's some dynamics that are interesting. No, I mean, it's interesting about Pete Carroll, though. He was kind of a failed head coach. I don't want to say failed, but like, he was the head coach of the New York Jets, and he was the head coach of the New England Patriots, and he didn't have anywhere near the success that he had in Seattle. And so he was coming. He went Jets, he went Patriots, he went USC. He was out of football for a year, then went USC, and then had a ton of success at USC. And so I think there was a lot of skepticism of him coming in, and he's the head coach. Like, when has he ever been a successful head coach? And his offensive coordinator was Jeremy Bates. He was younger than me. His quarterback coach was Jed Fish. He was younger than me. At that point in those guys' career, they had never really, they didn't have strong resumes necessarily. But what I learned through that year is that Pete Carroll grew as a coach when he was out of football. He learned from his mistakes in New York and in New England, and he became a really, really incredible Hall of Fame type coach at USC. He developed who he was as a coach, what his identity was, what the DNA of his team was going to be, what his criteria for success was really going to be, one that worked, and how to win. Yeah. And like he was a much different, much better coach when we got him in Seattle. And I mean, he was awesome. Like I said, like I literally was looking for ways not to like him. He was great. And even the people that he hired, like the young coaches, like them plus Pete equaled something really special. Now, we hit some adversity that year. Our offensive line coach quit right before the start of the season. There were some things that didn't go our way. But I think as a coach, I think you can sort of you're not always going to be the guy that you were 10 years earlier. Like you can improve if you choose to do that. Yeah. And Pete's one of those guys that did it. And I think even like those young assistants, some of those guys to see where they are now is really, really impressive. And like the cream rises to the top, so to speak, or like, we say this a lot with athletes. It's like, hey, you either sink or swim. Like you figure it out. Yeah. The best ones figure it out. And I think the best coaches figure it out as well.
Did you ever think about coaching when you got done playing?
Yeah, I thought about it. But like my kids were like really one of the main reasons that I wanted to stop playing was because my kids were entering high school. I mean, I finished when I was 40. And so my kids were like, so I really didn't want to miss my kids. And I think that's probably one of the things that probably hardest about coaching is that you miss out on so many opportunities with your own children. So that was probably the biggest reason that I shied away from coaching.
Was it tough to finish? Obviously, you finished later, right? So it wasn't like I was in a situation where, man, I was just trying to fight to get a job somewhere. No one was calling me, so it was a tough transition for me. And I was like, man, what do I do now? Like I had no idea. I think for you, it may be a little bit different. Yeah, which is a really lengthy career, obviously for an NFL player. Baseball, I mean, everyone's like, oh, you can play till you're 40. Well, you can't. You got to be a stud to be able to do that. Football, you got to be really good as well. But was it leaving football? Was it what was that like transitioning to? Was it something like, okay, what do I do now? Or were you ready just to sit back? You mentioned your kids were going into high school. Were you ready to sit back and say, you know what, I'm just going to be a dad for a little bit? From those first moments leaving football?
I had two things that were like weighing on me, I think. Like, so the biggest thing was going from being the starter to the backup. And like, so like near the end of my career, I was leaving the Tennessee Titans and I was a free agent. And I had the opportunity to like sign somewhere to play as the starter, but the team was like not good. The organization was like notoriously like not impressive. And I think I was just done with that. I was more interested in being on a winning team with a chance to hoist a Lombardi that was like everyone's committed and we're close. And so I went, I sort of had to choose to be Andrew Luck's backup and sort of just like, I don't know, like punt on the opportunity to be the starting quarterback. But, then again, have an opportunity to do something I was not able to do in Seattle, and that was to hoist a Lombardi, which is like the goal every year. And so, like, that was a hard thing to do. Like, it was a really hard thing to humble myself. But I had this experience in Tennessee where I had a younger player in Jake Locker, the former Washington quarterback, that sort of like mentoring him was such a fulfilling thing for me and such a great experience that I felt like, hey, this is something that I can kind of give back to someone like Andrew Luck. So that was one thing. And then the other thing, to your question, no, I went like from the day I retired from the NFL, I jumped right into my career at ESPN, and
you went straight into it
right away, like not even one day off. And
wow,
it's not something I was really searching for. It just kind of found me a little bit, like the opportunity found me, and so I went from like playing football to being all in on this ESPN job, doing Sunday NFL Countdown and traveling to every Monday Night Football and doing Monday Night Countdown. And working throughout the week, and a couple years into that, I'm calling college football games on Thursday Night Football with Adam Amin and Molly McGrath and Pat McAfee, and like I was all in on that. And it did make it hard at one point to be all in as a dad and kind of, you know, making up for lost time on all the stuff I had missed out on their athletics and, you know, their careers. So, but it's a push and a pull, I think, for a lot of people with balancing that work-family balance, especially when it comes to sports with your kids.
Yeah, man, I'm kind of, see, I didn't have kids as a player, and you know, baseball's, it's interesting, man. There's so many guys who I've played with who, like, it's still trying to hang on those last couple of years. The kids are starting to get, obviously, school age, and then they're going to some AAA town or something, or they're just trying to search. They don't know what they're going to be doing in 6 months, man. It's stressful. Like, the Players Association have these career summits every year, and I go to them, and I talk about broadcasting and everything else. But I'm looking at some people around me when they just get out of the game. I'm like, dude, I know you. Like, you guys had really good careers, and now you're sitting here like kind of lost. You know, it's hard. Like,
yeah.
You know?
It's a real thing. I think for players, you know, a lot of guys miss the community. I think for me, what I missed the most when I left the NFL was I missed getting coached. Like, I would walk into the weight room and there was a team of people there that stayed up all night thinking about, all right, how are we going to get him better? How are we going to get him stronger? How are we going to work on his weaknesses? And I would walk in and I would just like turn my brain off and just do whatever they said. And therefore I'd be improving. Yeah. And then when you're retired and you walk into a weight room and you're like, what am I going to do today? Whatever I like to do, whatever I'm already good at, you know, and so I think I missed that coaching aspect of it. For sure. But I knew it was kind of time to retire. Like, I was playing for the Colts, and I was going to get my first start in a while. Andrew Luck had like a lacerated spleen or something, and he was injured. And my girls had a lacrosse tournament somewhere, I think in Boston, actually. I'm playing in Indianapolis. And my wife's like, girls, do you want to stay back in Indy to watch your dad? He's going to start this week. Or do you want to go to your lacrosse tournament? And my middle daughter was like, who are they playing? And my wife's like, oh, they're playing the Jacksonville Jaguars. And she was like, we'll go to lacrosse. It was like, I was like literally in our house.
Wow.
You know, my kids, like, athletic, you know, I don't know, had sort of like trumped where I was. It's kind of funny.
Right.
Now looking back.
That is funny. Yeah, you bring up a good point, man. It's that shut your brain off. Like, from when I was 18 on till, you know, I got done playing mid-30s, where it was like, you know, go in and it's all kind of scripted for you, or you kind of have something to shoot for. Now I'm just trying to, you know, drop a couple pounds. That's pretty much it. It's hard.
Yeah,
like,
well, even in work, like I've never heard a retired player say this, but like it's 100% true. Like you hear the guys, everyone says the same thing, like, oh, the locker room, the community. Like, you can find locker room, you can find community, but to find really solid coaching, like I'm telling you, like, this is an example I used the other day to somebody I was talking to. Like, I could complete a pass in football, but my quarterback coach, like, if that receiver has to change his gait as he's running, he's going to give me a minus on my grade sheet. Like, oh, that wasn't a good enough throw. Like, to everyone else is like, oh, it was a good throw, it was a completion. Yeah. But to, like, have that next level of coaching, be like, nah, that could have been better. Like, I crave that. I appreciate that. And so, like, you know, even on TV, I'd go on TV and, you know, after a show, like, my bosses, producers, directors, for the most part, early on, they'd be like, hey, good show. Be like, okay, like, I wasn't used to that. I was used to, like, getting critiqued and coached and criticized and, like, but, you know, it's just like a different industry, and it took me a little while. And I think with relationship, you know, you're able to speak into somebody's, like, you know, hey, listen, this wasn't good enough. Like, I need you to be better here. And I don't know, like, in a different industry, it's just like that transition was tough for me early on, for sure.
Yeah, it's so funny too. And you're speaking of the broadcasting side of things too. Like, for me, a little bit different to you. You got done. Obviously, you're probably very highly touted to be like, hey, look, you know, long-time quarterback. Can you come in and you analyze football and do a great job? For me, it was like, all right, I'm not Ken Griffey Jr. I haven't had that pedigree. How do I push? And I had to push a little bit, but the feedback side of things, I'd crave that feedback too. And it wasn't because, like, oh, you know, I was hard on myself. Every time I went on TV, I don't know how you were, but I was like, oh man, that sucked. I could have said this, I could have said that. I missed this, I missed that. And you get done and everyone's like, yeah, great job. I was like, no. If it was a great job, 5 years in, I'd be calling the World Series if I was just doing a great job every time. I'm not doing a great job because so-and-so is getting a job over me, right? So, it's so funny you say that because that's kind of the way it is. It's like, give me some good, solid feedback. There is a couple people that I can lean on and be very honest with me in regards to what I'm doing. But you right now, in regards to I want to go back to the coaching real quick. In baseball, it's this. I don't know how it is in football. In baseball now, it's like you don't even have to be like playing the big leagues. There's some coaches who haven't even played professional baseball who are coaching at the major league level. It's so analytically driven now, where it's like the track man can punch out these numbers, and if you can, dive into that and then translate that information to a pitcher somehow and change his grip, and then he's able to do it. Man, dude, you're in coaching. How is it in the NFL? Is it this situation where it's like, oh, you've never played in the NFL, you're not going to get into this coaching position? How does it work with the NFL?
Yeah, you certainly don't have to have played in the NFL to coach in the NFL. I think some of the best coaches that I ever had never were really great players, and I would say that's probably the norm. I think it's a little bit of both. Like Andy Reid, I think he played like guard at BYU. That was his career. But he's one of the best quarterback coaches that I ever had. He's probably one of the best quarterback coaches that Patrick Mahomes ever had as well. Like, that's just the nature of it. And I think you see more people that, never had their hand in the dirt, and that's totally fine. I also think that there's something really unique and special about someone who's been there and done it. Like my position coach when I started with the Seattle Seahawks was Jim Zorn. And like one of the things that really was helpful to me is that Jim had been there and done it. Like he understands what it's like, looking downfield when the guy's about to hit you with the crown of his helmet in the chin and probably sprain your jaw or break your jaw, but that throw needs to be delivered on time. Like there is something to that also. Like I respect that. Yeah. But no, like my first year in the NFL, Brett Favre was the starting quarterback and Doug Peterson was the backup quarterback. Brett Favre was a three-time NFL MVP, Super Bowl quarterback. Doug Peterson was rarely a starter. But like I would ask a question to maybe those two guys. I think Doug was probably better at explaining it to someone like me. He was better at coaching it. Brett was probably better at doing it. Walter Jones, probably the best offensive lineman that's ever played in football. I'd hear young offensive linemen say to Walt, they'd say, hey, Walt, how do you block the 9 technique when he's coming that wide and you're trying to hook him? Walt would say something like, yeah, just put him on his back. It's like, oh, gee, thanks, Walt. You're like,
so funny.
Appreciate that. So I don't think like being a great player and being a great coach go hand in hand. In fact, sometimes it's sort of the opposite. But there is a danger with analytics. And I saw it, this is how I'd see it in football. The numbers say to do this. But when you're in a stadium and you know the history of this team and you know the history of their quarterback situation and you know their fans and you know they're like hey, if we punt here and they go 3 and out, the stadium here is going to turn on them. Everyone's going to go to the parking lot. They're leaving town. Yeah. Like, I don't know how you equate that into analytics. And I've seen people screw up the analytics game because they're just like, they put the blinders on and it's just all about the numbers. There's got to be a human element to it as well, I think.
No, I totally agree, man. And that's kind of that balance. I think that it's kind of swinging back in baseball where there is that a little bit more of that human element. So true, man. Like I've had guys, especially lately with the Mariners, it's gotten like beyond what I was back when I was playing. But like, I'm not going to name names here, former Mariner, but great dude. And he's actually, I've spoken to him in depth about this, but watch him throw a bullpen. Throw a pitch. I don't know if you're familiar, but like, the track man sits there and you've got the iPad that pops up all these numbers. Boom, throw a pitch. Literally spending a good 45 seconds looking at this iPad going, oh, yeah, well, did this, did that. Throw another pitch. Boom. And then 3 weeks later, he's in the game. It's loud. He's got to execute that slider and he just can't get it. And then all of a sudden there's a runner on second and then the game starts speeding up and then boom, the guy's throwing 98 with this wipeout slider. And it's like, dude, just get away from the iPad for a second and just get into this mode where like when you're training, get away from that 45 seconds in between pitches, get into that 20 seconds, pretend there's a runner on. So yeah, there definitely is that balance. I was curious with football, and that
well, I think that the biggest thing I see is that a lot of this new stuff in sports, we'll take football as an example, but it's any sport. If like the quest is defined like literal, like actual improvement, like to find excellence and consistent excellence, fine. But if the quest is really just a moneymaker for somebody else, then we're probably on the wrong track. And I think that happens at times. Like you basically get like a more expensive mousetrap. Like it's just like very expensive stuff and it's kind of cool, but like we don't need that. Like literally don't need that. Like I literally need someone like Andy Reid to say, take a deep breath and make sure you bend your knees. Be like, got it. You know, like that's all I needed. I didn't need 100%. All this other like craziness, you know, but yeah, I'm mostly in favor of it though. Mostly.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, you have very athletic kids, right? You see that on the youth level too. I mean, in baseball, there's so many hitting gurus, pitching gurus. And it's just like, bro, like it's too much, man. And sometimes too, when I talk to kids or I'm coaching kids, I try and give them that, hey, just bend your knees, take a deep breath way of doing things. And they look at me like, that's not good enough. Yeah. Because in their head, they're looking at some gizmo or some, magic pill online that's telling them this and that. They're like, oh, no, if mum and dad are paying for this, whatever program, then this is kind of what I expect.
Yeah, too easy. It reminds me, I'm going to screw this story up completely, but it reminds me, I had a coach once who told me there was someone that sold like it's like pancake mix or whatever, and it was like just add water, and it didn't sell well at all. And then it was like add an egg and add water, and it was just like it sold better. It was like, oh, it must be better if like it's a little bit more difficult. But sometimes we make things like a little bit too difficult. Like we actually don't need it. And I think that's probably so. I've been coaching high school football for the last 2 years. I'm coaching again this year, and it's been really, really interesting to me, like some of the stuff that I've learned. And like one of the things is, how can I make things that are complicated seem very, very simple? And that's really my quest. And I always felt like as a player, the coaches who could make it simple for me allowed me to play free and play fast and just to cut it loose and have fun. And that's really the best way to play. And like there's a lot of I hear kickers talk about it sometimes. Like here's an example I heard recently. If there's a balance beam on the floor, call it 12 inches wide, okay? Maybe. Yeah. And you're walking on it. You're gonna walk on it like it's nothing, like it's absolutely nothing. Now you put it like 100 feet in the air. It's still 12 inches wide, and you're gonna walk on it like kind of off balance and nervous and just like tentative and. And it's just like, what changed? The 12 inches didn't change or whatever. Like just your perception of like, what would happen if I fail here changes. And so like, there's so much in the mindset training of for sure playing quarterback, but like just all of it. And so I don't know, there's something there, but as a coach, I think it's really important to, to figure out the proper way to coach each kid. And sometimes it's nothing that makes you feel like, oh, that was worth $50 an hour or whatever it is.
Yeah. But man, let's get real here, man. If you go in, who else is on the coaching staff, by the way, at this high school?
It's an embarrassment of riches. I mean, we had Rob Ninkovich, we had my dad on there. We like I said, my coach is very successful. He's been there for years, but
well, if I'm a parent, now I played sport at a high level. If I'm a parent and my kid's like, yeah, hey, Dad, I'm really into football. I go to high school and I got friggin' Matt Hasselbeck as my coach. I'm probably going to be like, hey, son, listen, if he tells you to bend your knees, take a breath, that's what you're going to do, regardless of whatever magic
Ryan,
pill your buddies are using.
Here's the thing, though. Like, we've been at the highest levels. Like, there's some coaches in high school that are just as good, if not better, than some coaches that are in the pros. Like that's just,
really?
I mean, yes, because you got to coach your players. And I would even say, like my first year coaching high school football, I would have been more comfortable coaching Josh Allen or Joe Burrow. Like it would have been a little bit more like my mindset. Like I get how to kind of like I don't know, it's just like kind of the world I was in. And to take it back down to high school was like a little bit of an adjustment. The hash marks are different. I'm not sure what you and your teammates can handle. I'm not sure what's enough or what's too much or too little. And like, I think there's some coaches, I mean, some of the best coaches that I ever had in my entire life, they weren't all from the NFL, you know, and like they weren't all in football. Yeah. So, you know, I don't know. Like, I think I always had a lot of respect for high school coaches, but I think I've got, I don't know, like a new respect for like whatever the level, whatever the sport. There's some great coaches out there, and you know they just don't make as much money as some of the others. That's all.
I got you. I just yeah. Hey, by the way, I might off air. I might have to get some parenting tips here. Dude, you got kids who are all going to play high level college sports. Wild. I'm sitting here. I've got a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I just feel like that. There's that pressure, dude. Like even for my daughter, like I go to a basketball game, she's just got a big smile on her face, having fun. But you just feel that, like, oh, you know, so and so didn't miss a shot. Oh, and so look how well she dribbles. I'm like, oh man, Kennedy's not dribbling as well as that other kid, or whatever it may be. It's just,
I get it, man. I get it. Listen, my girl, I would just say this. I'm a huge believer in multi-sport athletes. You know, both my girls earned scholarships to play lacrosse in college. They're both at Boston College. We're in the Final Four this weekend, national championship, hopefully Sunday. It'll be BC's 7th national championship appearance in a row. But, like, you know, it wasn't always lacrosse for them. It was hockey. It was baseball. It was basketball. It was soccer. It was gymnastics. It was triathlons. It was just all of it until the sport kind of chooses you. And then, like, for some of these sports, I know nothing about the sports. Lacrosse, I knew nothing about lacrosse. And it's probably the best thing because I let their coaches coach them. And I would just clap and cheer and hydrate and feed and, you know, be on call for injuries, which happen all the time. And I think it was actually harder for my son, who, again, multi-sport athlete, all this stuff. 2 years ago, I became his quarterback coach. And now that's a dynamic, coaching your own kid in a sport that, like, you know. And I would say to him, like, hey, make sure you do this. And he'd kind of give me, like, the eye roll, like, yeah, whatever. And then all of a sudden, like, you know, one of my friends, Trent Dilfer, says the exact same thing. And he's like, yes, sir, Coach Dilfer, got it. It was like that was almost tougher, you know, being in that environment.
Yeah, I gotcha.
So
was your son, was he just straight, like, when was it like, yeah, hey, I love football, Dad. Like, this is what I'm going to do. Like, what age was
the rule in our house is like when people would say, oh, what's your favorite sport or what's your best sport? Like, the rule in our house is whatever sport you're currently playing. Like, you're not allowed to say, like, what's your main sport? You're not allowed to say that. Because my main sport growing up was baseball, but, like, baseball didn't choose me back the way that football chose me back. And so my son was committed to play lacrosse at Maryland his junior year in high school. His sophomore year in high school, he was the 3rd-string quarterback on a team that won 1 game. And so, like, you know, even when he committed to play lacrosse at Maryland, he was still chasing this dream. And that's all it was a dream to play college football. And his junior year, he was like a different kid. He had puberty. You know, I don't know. Like, I was coaching him. So, like, there were some other things that were helping. But, like, but he goes on. He becomes a starting quarterback. He gets a ton of scholarship offers to play college football. He was Gatorade Player of the Year this last year. We won the state championship. But, like, had I let him just be one sport, you know, I'd probably be sitting in a hockey rink somewhere like you've never heard of right now. So I'm a huge, if you can't tell, I'm a huge believer in multi-sport athletes. And you can't do it in every sport. I get that a little bit. But it definitely was my experience, for sure my kids' experience. And I'm a huge believer in it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you for sure. Just the multi, and plus it breaks it up too, man. Like travel baseball now, it's like a 12-month setup. It's like, come on, guys. Like, and that's we talk about the arm injuries. I've talked about.
But I even think understanding, like, you know, there were some sports where my kids were the best player on the team, and then there were other sports where my kids literally were like the last kid to make the team, like make the cut. And I think there's something about being a great teammate or a great leader that you understand. Yeah. Like, I heard Steve Kerr talk about this one time, head coach of the Golden State Warriors. I heard him talk about, like, on their team there's 13 guys, and, like, everyone on the team needs to understand what it's like to be Steph Curry and the pressure and, like, all the stuff that goes into what it's like to be him, player number 1.
Yeah.
But yet everyone on the team needs to understand and respect, like, what it's like to be player number 13. like maybe a backup power forward, knowing that if a shooting guard gets hurt, you did nothing wrong, but now you're off the team because we got to bring in another guy. And I think there's something great about leadership style and being a great teammate that when you are on another team and maybe you're, like you're on the bench or you're, like you don't get the same love from the coach or whatever it is. Like, I just think there's great lessons that I see now with my kids being college athletes. Like, I see that those lessons like shine through for them. And I think those go like way beyond your athletic career. I think those are important lessons to learn.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. In life too, especially, man. Oh, man. Hey, listen, I'll let you go in just a second. I've kept you for too long. I do have to bring this up, and this came up a couple of weeks ago. I was on a podcast on awfulannouncing.com, of course. Anytime you see your name next to Awful Announcing, you're sitting there going, oh,
it's
no,
a weird name. It's a great site. It's a weird name, but it's a great site.
Yeah. But I brought up the story. I don't even know if you realize this, Matt, but 2010, I was having a terrible year in Seattle, like terrible, to the point where I was in Chicago, gave up I can't remember how many runs. The bullpen was dead, so we had nothing. So I just had the sacrificial lamb out there, just giving it up. That night, they're like, hey, look, we have to put you on the Phantom. At the time, it was called the DL, the disabled list, but now the Phantom IL. They don't do it as much anymore, but I don't know if they do it in football. In baseball, if they don't want to have to designate you for assignment, make a transaction, they want to keep you. I'm just going to tell you, sometimes they come up with a little, call it a fake injury. So this story came up a couple of weeks ago, and I tell this story. So I give it up. We're playing the White Sox. Give it up. It's terrible. I'm just crawled in the fetal position in my hotel room afterwards. And I get a text message saying, "Hey, by the way, we're going to put you on the Phantom tomorrow. We'll let you know what your injury is." All right, no worries. I'm walking. I get off the bus. I'm walking into the stadium. I get a text message from Matt Hasselbeck saying, "Hey, man, I heard about your back. If you need a back guy, let me know. I've got one for you." And I'm sitting I'm like, oh, okay. That's how I found out what my injury was going to be.
Did you tell me the truth, or did you just lie to me too?
I think I felt so bad, Matt.
Because I heard this story recently, because I think Awful Announcing picked it up and someone sent it to me. Right. And I saw it, and I sat there and I'm like, I think he lied to me too. I think you probably were like, oh, wow, thanks, man. Thanks.
I did. I said, hey, well, I'm not going to, hey, well, listen to this, right? I said, hey, thanks. I'm sitting there, oh man, how do I turn around and say, hey, because the reason why is because I was so appreciative, and I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to you. I was so appreciative of the fact that you actually reached out and said, hey man, I've got a back guy for you. The dude is in Vancouver. And I'm like, I was just so
listen, well, you said you had a bad year in 2010. I had a bad year in 2009, and it was really this back injury that was really started in 2008, and I never let it get right. And so I think most people with back injuries, or really any injury, you respect the person that has what they're going to have to go through. But in 2008, I think this is true. I don't know if it's true, but I think I was the first ever NFL player on Twitter. And so I was set up in 2008 on Twitter when no one else was on Twitter. And I would get I was the first to know everything. And, so I probably was the first, some reporter, reported it, but that literally came to my phone immediate. And then I might have even known before you, I'm not, is that what you're saying?
You did. That's what I'm saying. You did.
Yeah.
I had no idea that's how I found out my back. I literally had to walk around the clubhouse with a heat pack on my back. Right. But here's the deal. Here's the thing. This is what I'm getting to. A couple of years later, I'm I'm working out with Tom House. I'm throwing really hard, man. I'm resurrected. Guess what? I hurt my back. And I was going back through my text messages saying, who was that back guy he was talking about? And lo and behold, a year, I had chronic back issues after that. I had a couple back issues when you text me, by the way. I'll just say. But a year after that, I meet someone at USC. He's like, oh, I'm from Vancouver, Vancouver up in Canada, right? And he's like, oh, yeah, hey, you play for the Mariners. I'm Matt Hasselbeck. I'm like, yeah, I know Matt. Not we're best buds, but he goes, oh, yeah, well, I worked at the play. We helped him out with his back. Yeah. I'm like, you are kidding me. So anyway,
I developed a pretty awesome team up in Vancouver. It started with this guy, Rick Celebrini. I saw a guy, Dr. Jerry Ramagita up there. Rick Celebrini was amazing for me, though. I mean, some of the hardest workouts that I had ever done, really avoided surgery, and Mine was a little bit unique, and I think with like to your point about injury reporting, like what could I tell you that's interesting? Like in the NFL, you have to report the injuries. Like you have to. They're very, very strict on it. But they can report it sort of like they can get creative on how they report it. So as an example, like if a player has broken ribs, and it's what happens when you have broken ribs? Well, it actually causes your back to like spasm. And so they can report, oh, back spasms, but you have broken ribs. You know what I mean? And so like the result, the symptom is like, oh, like the entire right side of my like lat is seized up because I have broken ribs. On the injury report, it'll say back spasms. And so like when I was in my 30s, I can remember feeling like a little bit annoyed, like you're making me just sound old. Oh, he's out today with back spasms. And I'm sitting here like, are you kidding me? Like, I can't even drive my car. My ribs are broken. I can't turn left, but I'm going to play in this week's game because I'm going to let you inject me with basically Novocaine so I can play in the game. And you're putting out there to the masses, oh, he's old. He has back spasms. Like, I was like, it's annoying. Like, it's annoying. So...
Is there an advantage, though? You mentioned the fact that, you do something to your ribs that causes back spasms, therefore the report goes to be back spasm, whatever it is. Is there any advantage, like I just mentioned with baseball, that's to keep someone on a roster so you don't have to put him on the waiver wire, someone picks him up? In the NFL, is there any advantage to that?
Yeah, they're sort of protecting you because, like, if the other team knows that you have broken ribs, they're coming at you with, like, the blitz packages of the century that you haven't studied or seen on film. And so if they're game planning like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and all they're seeing on the injury report is like, oh, he's got a back spasms. They're like these coaches, wherever they are, they're probably like, oh yeah, I got back spasms too, and no biggie, he'll be fine for Sunday. So like I think there's something where they are protecting you. I think in hockey too, like they'll just say like lower leg injury. They won't say like exactly because I think like people will be targeting you or going after it. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, it's all part of it. Like it's like a push and a pull. Like your pride versus your sympathy that you're gonna get. Like it's like which would you rather have?
Right. Yeah. So well, I'm glad I cleared that up years and years and years later. Like I said, I don't know. I can't remember if I said, "Hey, Matt, no, it's just a fake."
No, because I've never heard that. So you probably lied to me too. So our friendship that was forming is now like it suffered a little bit of a hit, actually.
Yeah, it has, and I don't want to leave this conversation.
Listen, I had a radio show in Seattle. Like it was like a short show, 710 Cairo, and every week. They would ask me one year, I think it was 2008, they would ask me about my back. And I sort of, just to protect Seneca Wallace, that was the quarterback that was starting instead of me, like it was helpful to, again, same thing, like Seneca was more of a runner than I was. And so it would help the game plan against whatever team if we were like, oh, we don't know who's going to play this week. But I had sort of known, like, I know I'm not ready this week. Like I'm going to try, but like I know the chances are like very, very small. And like the guilt that you have kind of like, oh yeah, I'm doing my best. But like you kind of know like there's like a 10% chance or like a 50% chance. Like there's a small, like, I don't know, like in your head, what's probably going to happen. I get it. You have a little bit of guilt with that, but there are rules. You got to follow them. And I think for the most part, the teams that I was on, I felt like we always played that game the way that it was supposed to be played.
Yeah, and by the way, this is my first and only ever time doing like a little Phantom stint. And there was rule. Like they said, hey, look, you have to, this is what your injury is. Like, this is how you have to play it. The other thing was too, like the media was so friendly to me that they were like, oh, so, and some of them knew, like they weren't stupid. But some were like, oh, so this is why you're struggling, isn't it, Ryan? I was like, yes, this is why I suck. Right, this is why I got a 6 ERA right now.
It was a real thing, though. Like, I don't know what it's like for your sport, but as a quarterback, like, and you play poorly, you never want to admit that you have an injury because now it's like you're making an excuse for like why you played poorly.
100%.
Like,
yeah, 100%.
I remember even in college, like I played my whole senior year basically with a broken right thumb. And like I never said anything about the thumb because I didn't want to be like this like excuse maker. And it was just like, and they knew about the thumb. It was just like, it's hard. It's a tough place to be in. as an athlete.
For sure.
That's when you'd love it. I actually think this is one of the things I would change about football. They have these head coaches get up and they do the press conference and they talk about the players' injuries. And, like, the coaches just hide behind, like, I don't know, talk to the doctor, whatever. Have the doctor. Have the athletic trainer. Have them do the injury report and have them protect the information. But give me something, like, real. You know, like, he's got an AC sprain. It's a grade 2. Next. You know, instead of, like, some coach who knows just football, doesn't know anything about medicine.
Yeah.
He's up there like,
that's a good point. I didn't even think of that.
His shoulder's a little sore. It's like, oh, could you make me sound any more soft? You know, like, thanks.
Yeah, I had a little tweak in my.
But honestly, that's more accurate information, and there's plenty of people in the medical community who be really good at sports medicine explaining that. And I just think we would accomplish the goal of what we're trying to accomplish, especially with like sports betting being such a big thing now, and you want to level the playing field, and you're like, just get a professional up there to just talk about, hey, high ankle sprain, it's usually 6 to 8 weeks, might be 4 to 6 with this guy. That's the deal. Next question.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. I might make that a thing, especially in baseball, because you get the old like, or no, they can get kind of technical these days. That is for sure. But Matt, listen, man, I really appreciate the time. This was fun. I'm glad we got to clear up any. I know you feel like I'm a liar.
Liar.
To
what
you
else?
And,
faker.
Our relationship
pretender.
is gone. Oh yeah, brutal. But man, this is fun. I appreciate it so much, man. And it was good going back to some of those days. Back, God, man, time flies. But it was so.
Hey, what was
fun
the name of the
up.
bar we went to the first time we met? Do you know?
I was gonna bring that, man. I was gonna bring that up. Kangaroo and Kiwi, which, matter of fact, they are a sponsor on the show.
Really?
Hey, you know what? You've talked yourself into it. I'm going to put you to the test here now. You ready? We're going to do now. You've just, oh man, I'm telling you, I feel like
we can do it some other time. But I'm glad you remembered that.
No, I'm going to bring this up. All right, we have a segment, Matt Hasselbeck. We have a segment on this show called "How to Speak Australian." I'm going to give you an Australian word, and you have to try and guess what it is. Okay. So how to. Oh, no, you'll be fine. The How to Speak Australian segment is brought to you by the Kangaroo and Kiwi Australian Pub, which is now in Ballard. It used to be there at Green Lake, and that's right. That's right. It was my birthday. It was a fan fest, and I was like, I sent you a text, "Hey, come along," and you rocked up, and I was like, "Oh man, sweet, this is awesome."
Can we even believe that it was really your birthday now? There's a proven matter.
It was just an excuse.
Was it even your birthday? You're like the guy that you're like, oh, it's his birthday, and then they bring the dessert out, like a free dessert.
Oh man, exactly. That's me. But let me just pull this up because I did have a good word for you because I was like, oh man, I completely forgot. I'm glad you brought this up. Let me find it real quick. Is it going to pop up? No, it's not. Okay, here. You know what? Look, I'm going to do this. I'm going to have old man.
Hey, are you even from Australia? Like, if you were really from Australia, you could come up with your own word right now.
I know. This is ridiculous. Oh, no, there's plenty. I'm gonna get something tough for you.
Hey, if I find out that you're from like Bloomington, Indiana, after all these years, I'd be really mad. First is the fake back injury. Now you're not really from Australia. What else?
Oh,
wasn't your birthday?
I know, dude. This is shameful. All right, here we go. All right, this is. Oh, no, I was trying to think of the word for someone who makes up stories like myself about my back, but this is even better. All right. Okay, ready. So, How to Speak Australian segment. This is brought to you by the Kangaroo and Kiwi Australian Pub, the one and only Australian pub in Seattle. We are going to have a live watch party there later on this year. But Matt Hasselbeck, I've got a word for you. What does the word bludger mean?
Oh, bludger? Oh, yeah, that's an easy one. It's like bludger. I don't know. Let me think. Bludger?
Do you want it in a sentence?
Can you please use it in a sentence?
Okay, get off the couch and stop being such a bludger.
I think a bludger is someone who plays Call of Duty all day, kind of lazy person, a procrastinator.
Boom. Nailed it.
What do you say?
Yeah, that's it. That was too easy. I gave it away.
I was gonna go funny, and then I was like, you gotta be funny and appropriate. It's a little harder to be funny and appropriate. So
I was expecting another Australian accent, but no, you nailed it. My goodness. No, a bludger. So, stop being such a bludger.
You're such a bludger.
So, Yeah, bludger. That was me in 2010 faking back injuries. I was being a
Boston
bludger.
accent and an Australian accent aren't too far apart, you know?
Hey, man, I was playing AAA up in Pawtucket, and I was speaking free and easy. Without the R, I didn't have to roll the R's. It was great.
She parked a car over there near the garden, and she had to walk all the way to Fenway Park. It was like ridiculous. The cruiser pulled up and gave her a parking ticket. It was wicked bad. It was wicked bad.
There it is. See, you have that natural. There's that connection. I'm telling you right now, you have that natural Aussie accent. You'd be able to get off that Qantas jet, the flying kangaroo, and just be riding home. Thanks to the Boston background. Awesome, Matt. This has been great, mate. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and love to have you on again sometime.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ryan.